When the word machine gun comes up in discussions about World War II, the German MG42 is almost always the first name mentioned, and for good reason. Its legacy is written in the after-action reports of every Allied army that faced it. But here's the reality that often gets overlooked. The sheer terror of its sound, the famous Hitler's buzz saw, was only half the story. The other half was a revolution in industrial thinking and infantry doctrine so profound that it didn't just win battles. It dictated the very future of how every modern military organizes its infantry. The common misconception is that the MG42 was feared simply because it fired fast. That's true, but it's a surface-level observation. The real devastation it caused wasn't just the number of rounds it could put in the air, but the fact that the German army didn't treat it as a support weapon. They treated it as the center of the universe. For the average American or British rifleman, the squad was built around the rifleman with the machine gun assisting him. For the Germans, the squad was built around the machine gun, and every rifleman was there to feed it, protect it, and carry its ammunition. That conceptual shift is what made it feel like you were fighting a platoon armed with nothing but automatic weapons. To understand the MG42, you have to forget the gun for a moment and look at the industrial and tactical decisions that turned a mechanical device into a battlefield multiplier. The MG42 was born not from a desire for terror, but from the cold reality of economics and logistics. By 1941, the German military was fighting a war on multiple fronts with a superb weapon, the MG34. But the MG34 was a precision instrument. It was machined from solid blocks of steel, a process that was time-consuming, expensive, and required skilled labor that Germany couldn't spare. It was a jeweler's piece in a war that needed carpenter's tools. The German High Command realized they couldn't win a long war with hand-fitted parts, so they did something that went against the grain of traditional German engineering. They prioritized speed and simplicity. The MG42 was designed by engineers at Grossfuss AG, a company that primarily made sheet metal lanterns. They didn't think like gunsmiths, they thought like tinsmiths. The weapon's receiver was made from stamped and pressed steel, welded together. It reduced production time from 150 hours to 75, and the cost from 327 Reichsmarks to 250. This wasn't just about saving money, it was about survivability. A nation that can replace its losses faster than its enemy gains a strategic advantage that has nothing to do with the soldier pulling the trigger. The MG42 was designed for the factory floor just as much as it was for the frozen mud of the Eastern Front. This is the first lesson for the survivalist-minded viewer. In a prolonged conflict, the weapon that is easy to make and repair will ultimately outlast the one that is simply better in a bench test scenario. But a cheap gun is useless without the doctrine to employ it, and this is where the Germans inverted the tactical pyramid. If you were a German infantryman, your entire existence, really, revolved around the machine gun. A standard German squad of 9 men was structured with a machine gun team of at least 3, a gunner, an assistant, and an ammunition carrier, and the remaining 5 or 6 riflemen existed purely to support that gun. Their job was to protect the flanks, carry extra barrels and ammunition boxes, and engage the enemy only to allow the machine gun to reposition and continue firing. The Allied doctrine, particularly for the Americans and British, was the reverse. The machine gun was there to support the rifleman's advance. The Germans saw the rifleman as a carrier for the machine gun. This is a critical distinction. When an American squad assaulted a German position, they were essentially assaulting a nest that had the firepower of an entire platoon. The MG-42's rate of fire up to 1,500 rounds per minute wasn't just for killing, it was for suppression. That tearing canvas sound pinned men down instantly, not because they were cowards, but because the human brain simply cannot function under that volume of incoming fire. It created a vacuum of courage. And unlike the weapons it replaced, the MG-42 was designed for endurance, not just bursts. The high rate of fire created immense heat, but the engineers solved this with a brutally simple solution: a rapid barrel change system. A trained crew could swap a glowing hot barrel in a matter of seconds, meaning the gun could maintain its insane rate of fire almost indefinitely. This was the death of the lull. With other machine guns, the crew had to wait for the barrel to cool, giving the enemy a window to maneuver. With the MG-42, that window was measured in the time it took to slap a new piece of steel into the receiver. The psychological impact of this cannot be overstated. For the men advancing against it, it felt as though the gun never had to stop. It was a mechanical monster that defied the physical limits of metal and physics. Or at least it seemed that way to the terrified rifleman eating mud 100 meters out. The story of the MG-42 also forces us to look at a darker, more complex aspect of the war: the relationship between advanced weaponry and unconventional warfare. While the Wehrmacht was using the MG-42 to hold the line, the Allies were also feeding automatic weapons into the teeth of the German war machine, just from a different direction. There is a common misconception that the OSS, the predecessor to the CIA, only supplied simple weapons to resistance fighters. That wasn't always the case. They distributed thousands of a weapon called the M42, a submachine gun, sometimes confused in name with the German gun, but very different in purpose. This American M42 was designed to be airdropped to partisans in occupied Europe. It was chambered in 9mm specifically so resistance fighters could use captured German ammunition, turning the enemy's logistics against them. It was cheap, it was stamped, and it fired at nearly 1,000 rounds per minute. The irony here is stark. The German army, which had perfected the art of the machine gun for conventional warfare, found its supply lines and rear areas harassed by foreign agents armed with cheap stamped weapons using German bullets. It reinforces a brutal truth of warfare. The gun is just a tool. The doctrine, the logistics, and the willingness of the man carrying it are what make it devastating. So, what does the MG-42 teach us about survival and preparedness decades later? First, it proves that firepower is about concentration, not distribution. The German model showed that putting your automatic firepower into one highly serviced team is more effective than spreading it thin among individual riflemen. For the modern survivalist or historian, this translates to the concept of a base of fire. It's better to have one reliable, crew-served weapon with a dedicated ammunition bearer than to have 3 riflemen trying to do the same job with insufficient ammo. Second, the MG-42's stamped construction is a masterclass in logistical survival. When the supply lines are cut, you can't machine a new receiver from a block of steel in a village forge. But you might be able to stamp one out if you have the right dies. Simplicity is a survival trait. And finally, the legacy of the MG-42 is so profound that you can trace a direct line from Hitler's buzzsaw to the modern general-purpose machine guns of today. The German post-war Bundeswehr used the MG-42, rechambering it as the MG3. The Swiss, the Austrians, and even the American M60, while different in operation, was heavily influenced by the belt feed and quick-change barrel concepts pioneered by the MG-42. The weapon didn't die in 1945. Its DNA is still on the battlefield. The MG-42 was more than a machine gun. It was a statement that the industrial age had fully merged with the tactical. It proved that a well-fed machine gun supported by a squad of ammunition bearers could hold a battlefield against overwhelming numbers. To understand it is to understand that war is won by those who can shoot, move, and communicate, but more importantly by those who can outproduce and outthink the enemy's doctrine. The gun itself is just history. The lessons it teaches are still loaded and ready. If you value this kind of in-depth historical analysis, make sure you're subscribed to Warmer China. We don't just scratch the surface, we dig into the dirt. Hit the subscribe button and share this video with someone who needs to understand what the textbooks leave out.